Okay, so now today we are going to finish hire and retain personnel, 3C4. All right, promotion. Standards or certifications. Industry certification states that the employee has met certain standards deemed important by the profession, which is ISM's plug for their CPSM certification. Not untrue. It's standardized testing, at least it shows you can take a standardized test and pass. Career advancement in a company, depending on its growth, there may not be enough advancement opportunities for everyone who desires to advance, hence the pyramid effect. Employees should be coached on what makes the most competitive candidates for promotion and encouraged to attain those qualifications. Career advancement does not necessarily mean moving up to a higher level position. There may be more opportunities in a lateral or another function. Advantages and disadvantages of promoting from within. So advantages is practice tends to increase morale, because we all like to know that we could get promoted. It reduces total training costs, and personal characteristics of the individual are well known, or are at least known, and the person is knowledgeable about the company, and obviously there's some kind of fit there. Disadvantages of promoting from within. One promotion cause a chain of movement throughout the company, which can cause instability as people learn new jobs. And I've seen this a number of times in purchasing. If the company is growing rapidly, this policy can sometimes result in the promotion of people who are not yet ready to be promoted. And that's happened a time or two. And in international companies, the likely candidate may be in another country, but cultural and language issues may cause a candidate to be reluctant. It can produce what is termed as inbreeding. It may hinder the flow of new ideas into the company and stem creativity. Also spawns the not invented here syndrome. Can also lead to poor morale on the part of individuals who are not selected and may affect their future performance. Prospective candidates should be cross-trained in tasks related to jobs to which they might be promoted. Then when an emergency occurs, they're ready to assume the job on short notice. Disadvantage or advantages and disadvantages of promoting from the outside of the company. So advantage is it brings new ideas into the company. It prevents substituting seniority for management ability, which can happen if you strictly promote from within. A disadvantage is difficult to know how good an outside candidate will be until they have worked for the 90 days from the company. So I've run into a number of managers that says they can read people in 5 minutes and know exactly who they are. They are kidding themselves. You really don't know what you have for the first 90 days if they're coming from the outside. Can cause morale problems within the company if the practice is excessive. So if all your top slots go to candidates outside the company, it's not going to be good for morale. An alternative to consider is to promote from other functional departments within the company. Candidates will be familiar with the company's operation. It brings in experience from related functions that may be useful. So once you get above or get to the director level and above, this becomes much easier because those are more general management positions and not so specific purchasing. External recruitment avenues, online advertising. Company's name may or may not attract strong candidates. Open advertising lists the company's name. Closed advertising does not list the company's name. I guess if you got a bad rep, then you do closed advertising. Professional associations includes networking, allows the company to readily identify available professionals who are in the needed function. University placement centers Most big companies will go to the UW and a few others. And interns allow a company to try before they buy. Search organizations and staffing firms, another avenue to have someone else do the recruiting. And if using a temporary firm, this is another way to try before you buy. Although it's an expensive way to go. You are also not likely to get very qualified candidates at the top of the economic cycle. So right now, the people you're getting from temp firms for purchasing are probably not the best candidates because unemployment is so low. Internal referrals, companies' own workers are often the best source of candidates. And paying bonuses and referrals. If the new hire stays 6 months, I know PACCAR pays bonuses. I'm not sure if we require them to stay 6 months or not. Recruiting outside the country. So this is what a lot of the tech firms like to do, like to go to India because they'll work for cheap. But they only let so many in. So you got to be up on these visas and how to get them. Training needs. So further training is required if personnel are going to continue to add value and contribute to the company. Many companies assess training needs and make closing the gap a part of annual evaluation process. Individuals with management potential must develop general administrative, managerial, analytical, and leadership skills. And self-development is a partnership between the company and the individual, requiring both to participate. General training needs across the purchasing function should also be addressed through a gap analysis of skills. And many companies are focusing on overall perspective when developing personnel. Giving them challenging assignments, letting them know that there's broader career opportunities if they move, allowing emerging leaders to participate in cross-functional and national teams, and sending local leaders to other countries for assignments. So PACCAR does all of these. Succession planning. Purchasing departments should have a formal process to identify future position needs and to help determine who might move into those positions. And I know PACCAR purchasing does this like every August. The long-term plan should identify department needs over a 3-year period or longer, while the short-term plan should identify the most immediate needs. I've never been to one of ours, but something tells me we don't look at a long-term plan. It is important for international companies to determine if the person is a global citizen and willing to move to wherever the need appears. And this is PACCAR. They want you to, if you want to be in management, you gotta have to be willing to move. Successful purchasing departments will consciously rotate people through various other functional departments for experience, such as quality, finance, marketing, etc. And objective attainment, perhaps the single most important aspect of goal setting process is the performance review with the employee. This begins the discussion with the company's goals and the individual's contribution to that end, etc. And then termination. So consistent documentation and evaluation. Effective evaluation should provide continuous rather than periodic feedback. Although scheduled reviews or company policy, required corrective action should not be delayed until this pre-scheduled review time. In cases of unsatisfactory performance, the employee needs to be immediately made aware that changes in performance is required. Discussions on unsatisfactory performance need to be documented and placed in the employee's folder and the employee placed on probation. So we have I'm trying to remember the name of this program that we have. But yeah, I mean, you got to document it in writing. Guy's got to sign it. Otherwise, you don't have anything. Oh, we call it a PIP, Performance Improvement Plan. So you have to write goals over 90 days and counsel weekly, document all of that. And generally, employees should be terminated for consistently poor performance, insubordination, which will get you fired at PACCAR. both of those will. Serious violations such as theft, substance abuse, yeah, that'll get you fired at most any company. Adherence to established human resources policies due process of the HR policies for termination must be followed. And this is where most companies will screw up and get sued because they don't follow their own written policies. And lawyers love it when they don't do that. Union employees have additional contractual obligations that must be followed. And terminations must also be done in accordance with any applicable laws or regulations. In countries other than the US, you must be aware of or follow their employment laws. So like if you try to fire somebody in Europe, you gotta know a lot of stuff. Quantifying discussions to terminate employees. Reasons for termination should be well documented and discussed with the employer. This is where the PIP comes in, and you have to document in writing. Where appropriate, a witness should be present. And this is if the manager is a male and the employee that's having problems is a female, that you should have a witness. Typically, HR will review the termination with management to ensure policy was followed. Outplacement in situations where dismissal is not for cause. So if you dismiss for cause, it means you got fired. Companies may offer outplacement services to the employee. So dismissal for cause is usually for poor performance or substance abuse or insubordination or something pretty heinous. Organizations specializing in this outplacement service provide counseling, skills and aptitude, assistance, networking, professional skill development. This is when there's a major layoff at the company. They'll do outplacement services. Exit interviews, opportunity for the individual to provide feedback that can help both parties better understand what has occurred. And departing individuals can provide insight into management, other employees, processes, and politics. You're basically talking with somebody from HR when you leave. Severance. So severance packages are common when employees are dismissed without cause. So in a layoff situation or a force reduction or reduction in force, they'll often have outplacement services and a severance package. Amounts vary widely, but are generally based on years of experience and usually include outplacement services. Severance packages are also offered to employees where there is no longer a good fit between the individual and the company. That's more rare, but it does happen. And severance packages often come with a legal agreement if the package is accepted that prevents future lawsuits. That's pretty common. Key U.S. government regulations concerning selection and dismissal. The National Labor Relations Act of 1935 grants individuals the right to organize and bargain collectively. This is what allowed unions to start. The Equal Pay Act of 1963, people who perform the same work receive equal pay. Although it's a law, it doesn't always happen. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, it's illegal to discriminate among employees based on race, religion, color, sex, or national origin. I also created the EEOC. And then there's Age Discrimination Act of 1967. Employers cannot discriminate or terminate people who are over 40 years old just because they're old and they want their company to have better numbers age-wise. Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970, which OSHA, so can't put them in dangerous working situations. And then National Labor Relations Act was made in 35 when President Roosevelt and the Democrats were in office. That allowed the unions. And then the Taft-Hartley Act of 1947, Truman was president, who was a Democrat, but Congress was all Republican. And so they passed some restrictions to the National Labor Relations Act over Truman's veto in 1947. It still grants the right to organize and bargain collectively. The Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938 extended wage hour requirements for employers involved in interstate commerce and created the minimum wage. And then there's the Davis-Bacon Act of 1931, which requires contractors working on government buildings to pay a prevailing wage, with the Department of Labor will determine usually a union wage. So basically, Davis-Bacon jobs, you have to pay union wages. That's when you're building federal office buildings and stuff like that. Federal Hazard Communication Standard requires organizations to inform workers of all hazardous materials. This is where the MSDS, or what's now called the SDS, safety data sheets, came from. The American with Disabilities Act was the first President Bush signed into law in 1990. And then the Civil Rights Act of 1991, right by trial by jury on discrimination claims, and introduced the possibility of emotional distress damages while limiting the amount the jury could award. And then this is SB2, PACCAR's non-discrimination policy. All right. Well, let's go look at some questions here. So, the process in which organizations strategically plan for the orderly replacement of their key executives is called outplacement. No. Succession planning. That's a good answer. Assessment. It's not really planning for orderly replacement. And management by objective. The only one that really works there is B, succession planning. And we'll find the right question here. Yeah, it's B. Okay, I think that was the last one. Yep. All right, so there are 5 questions out there on the chat. And you just scroll up a little bit, pick up questions for 3-C-4, and today we're doing only questions 6 through 10. We'll go do those in 6 minutes. We'll go over answers. All right, let's go over some answers here. Not the right answers. All right, number 6 is delta. Because this legislation prohibits work from being performed under conditions that are dangerous. This is the OSHA Act. 7 is also delta. Candidate is still very young and pursuing other activities outside of work that require a lot of time off. Candidate's high potential, so ACME should grab her if they can. Of the positions listed, offering her contingent labor, which would be part-time contract work, something like that. Maybe a win-win for both sides. 8 is Bravo, because for the buyer to advance to the next level, which appears to be category manager, he will need a college degree. So somehow he's got to get that done. 9 is Charlie, National Labor Relations Act, and then its counterpart, the Taft-Hartley Act, which came in 47. The two of them together are kind of National Labor Relations Act. And then 10 is also Charlie. Promoting within limits the flow of new ideas and experiences into the organization. All right. And we will work on 3C5 on Monday.